Welcome, everybody, to Event Marketing Redefined. Thank you, as always, for taking time out of the middle of your day during the week. Today, I have Kate Patay on with me, and she is an event designer, event production, event and marketing strategist. 2021, she was a top 25 women in events, which is super cool. She is currently the director of engagement for Terramar, a DMC network company. Previously, she was a consultant. She had her own consulting agency. And then she was also the chief brand officer for creative coverings and has done a lot of cool stuff, worked with a lot of big brands like Hilton and Oracle and Caesars, and put on some really, really cool stuff. It's a very long-winded way, but Kate, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Very cool. We're going to come right out of the gates with this. And I want to know, from the event marketing, event planning space, give me some overview of challenges for these people that are putting on and planning and creating events that we want to talk about today.
I mean, the first one we can dive into easily is a budgetary one. That's just across the board, I feel like. Yep. Craziness. But I think one of the biggest hurdles to talk about that I'm looking at is transparency. I think we were starting to get really good at that for a while, and now we've kind of gone back and we're starting to hold things close to our chest again. And yeah, the transparency piece, you've got to work with people that you trust. And I share my vendor names with people, who it is. I include them in on conversations early. I think that's part of my success, as I work with really great vendors that I know aren't going to go after my business. They're a long-term relationship with me. And so I'm happy to bring them and give them the seat at the table every time. I think that's a huge topic of discussion right now in the industry.
I didn't see that one coming, but I really love that when you said transparency. Yeah. I mean, right out of the gate, I think that's a good one, because of what you're talking about, that trust. I mean, tell me a little more about that, like with vendors, with venues. What exactly do you mean by that?
Like when you hire me to plan an event or put one on, I'm the one who's outsourcing and making sure that you have the best of the best. And a lot of times, the person that's sitting in my seat, whether you're a planner, a DMC, whatever that looks like, you kind of want to shield your vendors and who you're working with so that your client can't go direct. Yeah. But if you're working with the right clients and with the right vendors, they know your value and you don't need to worry about that. I have been burned a couple of times, and it's really disappointing when you do see that happen. But if I give all those vendors a seat at the table to come and hear it from the client's mouth direct, here's, the goals, the expectations, this is what we want to see as our end product, I think we're all a lot more successful in the long term. I
know you and I talked a little bit about last time we spoke about like this badge of honor with event planners and event marketers. And it is always labeled as like one of the most stressful jobs, right? When that report comes out, it's like, it's always in the top 10, people say. Yeah. I mean, you have a cool take on this. I do. Tell me your take on this.
I'm not wearing busy as a badge of honor. I refuse to. If someone tells me that, oh, how you doing? And most times you're like, busy. One of the gals in my office, I actually stole this from her completely. Thank you, Kelly. She says, I'm blessed to have the business I do. She's appreciative of that. But rather than being busy, I prefer to be productive. I don't want to work a 14-hour day. I'd rather knock it out of the park in 8 hours and then shut down for the day. And I think a good way to be able to do that and start to work to find that balance is communicate that to your clients and to your team. Here's where I typically work. These are the best methods of communication. Here's how to get a hold of me, and expected timeframes. For me with email, I try to respond same day. Worst case is next day. It'll never go longer than that unless I'm truly, offsite, out of the country kind of thing. But I set those expectations early on in conversations and relationships so that they do understand when I say I need, 24 hours to work with another client.
I really like that, because I feel like even when we talked about it prior and hearing you say it now, you're not exactly like demeaning the fact that it's a busy industry. It is, that, it's a tough job. But what you're saying is like, well, it's about the result. It's about being productive. It's about a great event. And if you are organized and if you are clear on the way that you want to do things and you want to run things, you really don't have to be running around stressed, busy, and being like, oh, it just all came together last minute. It really shouldn't. There's game time things that happen. It's events, but I like how you frame that, because I think it's really important for people.
Yeah, I learned that from real estate, surprisingly enough. As an event professional, I think it's always important to look outside of just events and what we do and learn what other disciplines are doing. because they have some really great ideas on that. And I was reading a real estate book and they talked about the fact that banks aren't open on Sundays. Everyone that they deal with, it's just, you can't do anything on a Sunday in real estate, basically. So they tell their clients, that's your day off. You don't need to worry about the sale of your house because there's nothing that could be fixed at that point. So take that day for yourself and we'll hit the ground running on Monday. So I thought that was a great way of phrasing it. And I've kind of morphed that into how I present that to my clients in events.
Tell me a little bit about event planner versus event marketer. And maybe not maybe versus is the wrong term, but tell me the difference in your eyes between the two.
Yeah, the planning is the pre-plan, the production, the what is it going to look like, who should be working alongside the marketer to make sure that the messaging is getting out there in the right way. There are a handful of people that possess both skill sets, and I love that, but not everyone does. Like some planners are just, they're planning, they're in the zone, and it's not up to them to, then amplify that message out. But I do think it's important that they work together, knowing what the goals are, who they want, and that you're getting the right information from the planning side so that that marketing person can just, blow that event up for them, get the right people in the door, understand who are you trying to talk to, what are you trying to communicate, and you have to get that, get that little package wrapped up and handed to them so that they can put together a great strategy and plan for you.
Where does the strategy piece sit? Is it really more in the event marketer, the event planner? Is it a combination of both of them? Where do you see that?
It's a combination, but I think when it comes down to it, a true planner plans to what they need the end goal to be, whereas the strategy side really comes in from your marketing team putting together, okay, how are we getting to that end point and communicating that out to everybody?
Yeah. What's going on in events right now? Like, what are you seeing as, I don't want to say hot topics, that term's terrible, but what's going on? Yeah. What are the hot topics? What's going on with event marketers and event planners and events?
Yeah, I'm seeing quality over quantity, and I love, love, love that. Like, that is the absolute best. I would rather have in a room 2,500 of the most qualified individuals that want to be there and they're engaged and it's the right people than say, hey, look, we got 5,000 people in the door, but half of them weren't even the right fit, or they were just there because they're like, oh yeah, it's kind of like a vacation. I got to go.
Yeah. I like the quality over quantity. I'm hearing that too. A little bit smaller, a little more intimate, right? A little more experience driven.
Yeah.
Where do you feel people in this event space? A lot of these people are event people, they're marketers, and they're kind of shoved into this space, right? Like by brands and organizers and associations and anybody to put these events on. Where do you feel like marketers and event people who are getting the event space, where can they get educated? Where can they like better their career? What kind of content can they follow? Programs can they get into?
Oh my gosh. Well, any of the associations, there's a lot of them. If you're specific to marketing, I love going into like the American Marketing Association, looking at theirs. And then you have your event marketing. But like I mentioned before, I look outside of our discipline a lot of times to see what other industries are doing, because you can really get some really strong ideas from them.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, when all the craziness began and everyone was using Clubhouse, by the way, is anyone still using Clubhouse? Let me know in the chat if you are, because I've not seen a soul on it, but it was a thing for a while. And I was actually listening in on completely out of my realm conversations that were just so eye-opening as to how other people operate and do things.
Yeah.
But yeah, educate yourself. If you can take the time and it's the right content to go to an event in person, I'm telling you, disconnect, unplug from your phone, be there, immerse yourself in that, talk to other individuals, meet new people, see what they're doing, and then look online and see what options there are, like jumping on this one today. Stuff like this. I say, shout that from the rooftops and let your clients know you're taking this time to better yourself and your skill set so that you're a better resource for them. So that's a big one. If you ever get my out of office, I usually tell you where I'm at and why, because most of what I'm doing is to better myself so that I'm better for my clients.
So side note, anybody that wants to shout from the rooftop about this live show or the podcast, you can. There is no shame here. So fire it out there. Go ahead.
Do you use? What is the hashtag?
We don't have a hashtag.
Let's make it up right now. What's our hashtag here? You guys jump in the chat and tell me what you think.
Let's create one. Anybody wants to come up with a hashtag for this show, I'll take it. And we will start using it and we will throw it out there.
Yeah, thank you in that and credit you on that first one.
Thank you. This is being recorded, so they'll know we're a bunch of liars and I didn't come up with it, but it's okay. It's all right. What kind of content do you follow, Kate? What do you watch, listen?
Oh,
Where
I
are
mean,
you
listen
at?
to Taylor Swift. If you know me at all, you know that's the case. But that has nothing to do with this conversation. I actually kind of does. Her last album inspired an event we just did last week of how she kind of builds up and has little elements of surprise and drops Easter eggs, but then she keeps after the fact, she keeps that emotion going. Like when the event closes, you're not done. To me, that's not a win. When you just like close the doors and you're like, whoo, that bad boy's over. I'm
Yeah.
finished. Like, no, I want that return on emotion. I want people still thinking about this a month from now and 6 months from now and looking back at it. So I appreciate that piece. I subscribe to quite a few newsletters and blogs, ones that I think are very neutral and have a lot of different viewpoints in them. Look at, your skiffs of the world and, all of those different ones that are out there. And I get a ton. It doesn't mean that I read every single one top to bottom, but it kind of keeps you in the know. Look at Skift, look at the Vendry. BizBash always has a lot of great content. Smart Meetings does as well. I'm trying to think. Oh, and Party Slate is amazing. If you ever need inspiration, they're fantastic.
I actually skiffed Miguel Neves is the
He's
chief.
awesome.
Yeah. So he's coming on the show.
When?
I don't know. I should know that. Ish can tell you.
Okay,
Ish can tell you.
When we post this, we will then put that into the verbiage on it so you guys can watch, because Miguel is an absolute rock star.
Yeah, he has some cool stuff, very modest about it as well, but seems to really have a cool scope on the industry, which is nice.
He does.
So I'm looking forward to having him on. I want to dive into some of these cool things that you have worked on. I want to talk about some of them. So I'd love for you to describe some of them as vividly as you can. Talk about the strategy, the thought process behind them. We'll dive in. Okay. Launch party, Conrad, New York Midtown launch party, correct?
Yes, that was it.
Tell me about it.
Oh, that was October of 2019. So before everything went bananas, and Hilton was upgrading one of their properties to the luxury brands into Conrad, and love working alongside Hilton. They're a fantastic company. I think they just got named this week as the number 2 company to work for in the world, which kudos to them.
They're very good.
They treat their people well. I really like hearing that. So we worked on this launch. They were rebranding. It was going to a Conrad, which means it steps it up a level, getting that 4 diamond status. And we had to step it up and make sure that we were on the map, because it's a whole different market when you're marketing to luxury. So the strategy behind it really was, it started as a whisper campaign that we called it, getting people to talk, knowing that there's something going on, talking to key professionals within the industry so that there was a buzz that started around it. And then we timed it to coincide not only with when they actually did the reflag, but when there was another industry event happening in town at Javits, so that we were able to get word out to a larger audience through that. And then we hosted a couple of private VIP, almost influencer style. And that word, I go back and forth on that influencer word, because I think it's been used at times. But I do think that people still carry some influence. So I think we have to
100%. I mean, I've talked about this with numerous people. The influence, I think the problem is that when people hear influencer, they think of one thing. They think somebody on TikTok dancing, but that's not really the case. It is people that influence something, an industry, a niche, a category, a market. It's somebody that you follow that is delivering good content that, you enjoy or you use to professionally or personally grow, per se. So I think it's, bad term, good term, but has a ton of use in the event space. I firmly believe that.
You just described that so well. I can't wait for this recording, because I'm going to completely use that as my explanation of it all.
I'm glad I nailed the influencer piece. It's good.
If you ever see me dancing on TikTok as an influencer, that's actually a secret cry for help. Dial 911 instantly. Something is horribly wrong. But we had a lot of fun with this event. And what we did for one of the after parties to really get word out across some of those influencer channels was they have a 2-story penthouse there, which is just gorgeous. Some of the best views in New York, all across Central Park, and it's a beautiful, beautiful space. So what we did was a very hard to get invite type of event. And, there weren't even +1s that people could bring to this. It was you had to have that golden invite to be there. And it was some of the top industry planners, professionals, and people that had some great social media following. To have that successfully, though, I think you need to set a really clear expectation. So every single person that I invited, I made sure I personally had the conversation of, hey, here's what we're looking to do. This is the goal. We're going to put on an amazing event for you. All you really need to do is show up, and as you post or talk about it, here's the messaging, and we want you to be aware. And then for the event side of it all, internally with the team, I really look to the property to say, what makes you shine? What are you best at? What do you want to show off on that side? I do that for every single event I go into, by the way. I don't ever want to, square peg round hole kind of something. I want to look to the venue to what do you do best, and let's do that really well. And then I provide each of them a little dossier, a pre-con paper, basically about every client. So it's got their photo, so the servers know who it is, the VIP status, what is their favorite drink? What don't they like? Like, we give that rundown so that everyone in the room knows. And, there's someone that has a very special tequila, and it's the only thing that they drink is that very one. So we were passing Aperol spritzes to start. And when he showed up, someone downstairs that already had their pack knew he was there coming up the elevator, and he was greeted with his tequila that he always wants. So you blow people's minds, and in turn, they want to sing you from the rooftops.
A lot of what I just heard you say in this party, in this event that was planned, right, is essentially like intentionality. Everything is done with an intention, which is something I stress so much. It's like, why? I'm always like, why? Oh, you need this? Why? So I love that. I love that you had the strategy and the intention with not only your guests, but also the venue. What do you need? I'm setting you up, right? This is what it looks like. This is what the outcome is going to be. This is what we're trying to accomplish. And you're just getting everybody on the same page, essentially. And then the last piece is the personalization. You know what your thing actually reminded me of, talking about the tequila? There's a book that I love. It's called E-Myth Revisited. It's by Michael Gerber. It's a business book. It's fantastic. But he talks about the personalization that you need to get with your customers and your audience. And he uses an example of this hotel he used to visit with his wife, but a small boutique hotel. But he describes his arrival, departure, stay. It's unbelievable how well they know him. And he said, this makes me come back every single time. That personalization in an event, I think, is even bigger, because it's kind of a one-time thing.
It builds a lot of loyalty, and knowing who that guest list is. I always ask to see who is on that list, and I'll look them up online to see, I want to know what that whole board of directors, what your C-suite looks like. What do they love? What do they hate? And make sure we're inclusive too. I'm a huge advocate. All of my events have to be wildly inclusive. I know we always do, signature cocktails, for instance, but I have signature mocktails tend to be my go-to. And then you have the option to add vodka or add tequila or add what you want, but we're trying to be forward thinking and include people that may not want to have a cocktail.
Not drink.
They don't. A lot of people have stopped. That's a big trend I've seen in the industry. Yeah. I think we all went a little bananas in 2020 because we were having so many Zoom happy hours that a lot of people said, you know what, I need to take that back a notch. So, we have a mocktail list, and then you can add whatever you like to it, or just be holding the same cocktail, and it's inclusive.
I would go with tequila. I found a love for tequila in 2020. So I got real into it, but
I'm a kettle girl. Can we tag Kettle One? I want to be an ambassador. I'm not yet. I don't know how.
We'll see if we can get you as an influencer for Kettle. That would be big. So go full circle on the influencer thing. Let's talk about, everybody knows Dreamforce. Big name, big event. I'm super impressed what they've done with it over the years and kind of where it's come to. It's like a B2B, but a consumer event, but it just has so many elements of where I think events and trade shows and activations need to go. It's kind of a leader for me with South by Southwest. Dreamforce opening party, what you worked on, correct?
I did. Yes.
Tell us about it, the thought behind it, strategy behind it, what went into it.
Well, I worked with the George P. Johnson team. GPJ is just, chef kiss. They are so fantastic at what they do. So that was the team I worked under for it, because, the year prior when it had come back, weren't as many attendees. They were just getting comfortable being in person again. And for this one last year in September, all of a sudden registration just exploded. And then it also happened to be their 20-year anniversary. So while this, in the past was just an opening party as an opening and everyone gathered and got together, they felt like they needed to make it something more special. It was really this homecoming is what they had called it, on top of a 20-year anniversary. So while the whole event was planned out, a little bit on the later side in the planning process, it was decided that, we really need to plan something big to welcome them back. So I was tasked with producing the opening party. I had a 32 or 36 days, I'm blanking on it right now, notice on that for it all, which I do not, we always try and plan as far in advance as possible, but we did not have control over this last minute explosion of how many attendees were really going to be there. So my challenge was to take this event and basically set it on top of an existing event with a 1 hour turn time, because the actual event ended at 4 and we were going to launch with this party at 5. So to activate through 4 different locations, have 9 different DJs, and be able to marry together the 2 themes of both a homecoming and a 20-year anniversary underneath the umbrella of Salesforce and Dreamforce was a lot of boxes you had to check to be successful on that piece.
You know what I like about that is like the adjustment and the reaction that was made, because things in events, whether they're trade shows, events, summits, conferences, whatever it is, they happen quick. Sometimes you don't expect the amount of people. You don't expect the buzz. Maybe it's less, maybe it's more, maybe it fills, but being able to adjust, react, and then at the end of the day, it is user experience. Customer experience is everything. So being able to adjust, bring someone in like yourself to say, hey, we got to go throw this badass opening party because we have like double the people we thought, I think is a good use of it. So tell me a little bit, like, how did you execute something like that in 32 days?
Oh, thanks to Vince Dress for bringing me in and being an awesome partner on the food side of it all, because a lot of it was going to be, how do we feed them? How do we integrate? When you have an entire event already set up and you're putting one on top of it, you need to make sure that it's got to fit within the footprint that's already there and have everyone staged and ready. So food was a big part of all of that. And with the homecoming piece, first thing my brain went to was a marching band. I did a 39-piece marching band that we got all of the outfits for. We custom branded all of the drums, the brass. Every piece was an actual Dreamforce approved piece for it. I had a color guard that stood for their 5 pillars of success, along with all of their characters that they use consistently they're a ton of fun to work with. I am pulling in last minute resources. We brought in 76 performers from a company that I use all the time, Champagne Creative. I think that Rolando and Heather are amazing, and they saw the vision I had. One of the craziest pieces, and I know not everyone loves them, but it worked. And if you want to look up the photos or ask, I'll share them with you. The balloon piece of it all, this team worked for 4 solid days to cover the amount of space they did and make these huge, like Insta-worthy installations that spoke to it. But we also made sure that, because it is a very sustainable, environmentally conscious event, we had to use all balloons that are biodegradable. They break down in the same time as an oak leaf. And we also had to have that messaging out there, because, most people would walk in and look at a balloon and be like, I can't believe you just did that. So how do we keep the message of green and sustainability and get ahead of that? You have to control the narrative. We know this.
Yeah.
So
control the story, or the story controls you, right?
It is really true, and getting ahead of it. But shout out to the GPJ team that once they heard that, hey, we're going to put an event on top of yours, and yes, we'll break it down and have your event ready to open again the next morning in pristine condition. They all adjusted so quickly. And it was that idea sharing and that transparency to each other, and me just walking in and going, hey, I don't know what I don't know. What do I need to know to be successful? And it's almost showing a little bit of vulnerability. This event, this has been yours for years. How do I best be a partner to you, knowing that this is what I'd like to bring in? Do you see any potential roadblocks for me on that side? So a ton of what I'm going to say today, I think, goes back to that communication piece and the expectation. And then we got to surprise everyone, surprise show of that marching band, led them all the way down Howard Street. And we had all the cryo and everything going off, and the bubble haze came across. I love bubbles. I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm just being honest. If I could put a bubble machine on the back of my car, so when I hit the gas, bubbles shot out the exhaust, I would. But we created a wall of bubbles, so you didn't see them removing some of the back line and placing new items, and all of a sudden Fits in the Tantrums was there. So
wow.
It was a lot of fun.
So I think that's awesome doing it so quickly. I know, when we're talking about these things, you think Dreamforce, Salesforce, big budgets, all this stuff. But I think that this stuff has to be used as a roadmap. Like what Kate just described is, I mean, that's why these events are leading the way. That's why they're in the news. That's why they're winning awards. That's why the images are everywhere, is because the thought, the intention, the uniqueness, the differentiation, it's all there. They are delivering a experience to the people that are going. So it's like one of my things, Kate, is like in trade shows, which is a big part of our business and what we do, is I feel that trade shows have just constantly missed this mark. They've not followed this path. They've gotten a little stale. You're starting to see some changes, some shifts, some different thinking in like, okay, this is an experience. It's not just a show up, walk around, shake hands. And, it's needs to take a page out of the book of a South by Southwest, of a Dreamforce, of something that is focused on delivering a further experience. And I think this uniqueness, this differentiation, the surprise, because like, people don't want to leave their house for something they can do inside of their house now.
Yeah.
It's not enough anymore.
No, if I don't have a clear takeaway on why I'm going somewhere, I'm not going to go. I like what you said about surprise, because that was the underlying theme that we all went back to, was surprise and delight. Mm-hmm. Every event I do, I want to surprise and delight people, even if they think they don't want that. Maybe
surprise and delight. I like that. I can't see fits in the tantrums from my house walk out of bubbles. I can't do it virtually. I can tell you, was it last year, a year or two ago, I went to the event marketing summit, in Vegas. And one of the coolest and most memorable things from that whole experience was the guy who started Cameo, the app Cameo. He presented the lunch that we were at, and he was on stage and he spoke about his Cameo app. And even in just his presentation, it felt like a lot of the other ones. He was charismatic and he was fun. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I think that's a cool model. And obviously it is. But came up on the screen was Montel Jordan. And he was talking. He's like, hey, EMS, it's Montel Jordan, blah, blah, blah. And he started to, tell us about his Cameo experience. And then he started to sing, "This is how we do it." And I was like, oh, wow, cool. He's singing. But then boom, he came out right in sync, in step with the song. And everybody was like, oh my God, it's Montel Jordan. He was performing on the stage. I was like, man, that's something that I will remember. I remember that more than anything at that entire event because of the uniqueness, the extra step that they took. And now for me, like I've looked into Cameo. I've tried to do things and spend money there. It's interesting.
I love that. Yeah. When you have that just moment, that memory that sticks with you, that's the goal that we all have, is we want people to walk away and be like, wow, you guys, that was incredible. You missed out. You have to be there next year, kind of thing.
Yeah. Give people a little bit of FOMO. That's what events are for, rather than saying, you don't really need to go there next year. You want someone to say, you missed. You got to wait a whole year now. Good luck.
Yeah, but can we be real now that the pressure to perform more and more every year to top what you did the year before, when they make a comment to you and say, this is the best opening that we've had in 20 years, and you're like, ooh, no pressure on me to do better.
Now what?
Year. Okay.
Now what? Okay. So next one is you worked with BizBash and they did something called Connect in Vegas. And they also ran a hybrid in Tampa. Tell us about that.
It absolutely ties back into what you were talking about a more immersive trade show. And I love that they were forward thinking enough on it. So the Vegas one, making sure that it was more inclusive on the hybrid side, because the content someone sitting in a chair wants to hear is different than what the content someone on a screen wants to hear. You're essentially planning two different shows. So how do you marry those together? That was the challenge I think we were up against. We learned a lot during it. And so by the time we got to Tampa and did that, they knocked it out of the park. They really did. It was packed solid. The team that worked on the trade show side of it made sure they were pushing for immersive booths, not just someone standing with a 6-foot table and 2 chairs handing out a pamphlet about what they do. I can't imagine anything worse than that. Every single booth should be an experience that you go to, that you remember. It should be storytelling. You want to guide people in a specific way through it. And that's really what they were doing. By the way, they were setting up when there was education, where it was, who it was, to make sure that the traffic flow was right and intentional. And the amount of engagement that we had online for including the online audience, it's a tricky one, I'll say. because people online want to feel like they're in there. So we had to work really hard to make sure that they felt as if they were part of the event. But you have to keep in mind the people that are on site, they don't want to go online. They're there on site because that's what they're looking for. So they're not going to pick up their phones and talk to somebody that's online. So how do you, balance those? That was really where the strategy side came in, of getting this messaging out to the online audience so they felt included, but not trying to take away the in-person experience. So they nailed it. I thought it was an awesome event.
That's great. I've had a couple event marketers on that work for brands and are running in person, running hybrid, running virtual things. And a few of the things I've taken from it is that they kind of feel like hybrid, the term is fine. It makes sense because it means that, two things are happening at once, but really it doesn't exist. Exactly what you just said. It is two different experiences that have to be mapped out differently, planned differently, delivered differently, because the user or audience experience is vastly different from when you're there physically to where you're not. So I think that really lines up. And then tell me a little bit about go ahead.
I was going to say, with the hybrid, like you're saying, what I'm seeing and I love is that people are splitting it a little bit, that, they'll have the in-person for 2 days and then they'll do a follow-up that has that content that is the full online version. And that's sort of the new look of hybrid. I'm not opposed to that piece at all, because you can't make everyone happy in that room together. Not everything's going to translate. So have your in-person, that specific audience is there, and then, tailor something to your secondary audience on that piece. So you can't mesh something together if it doesn't work. Be intentional.
It's really smart. I think where people went really wrong with the hybrid was when it first started happening during COVID. They were like, oh, take your trade show booth and turn it into a virtual experience. And then you could be in the virtual exhibit hall and go. It's like, it doesn't work. You can't take the physical existing and turn it into virtual. Virtual is its own animal. You have to deliver its own program, its own everything. Yeah. And I think you're seeing people really catch on to that. And they're like, wait a minute, I got 500 people in person, and then I have 6,000 people virtually. And I'm going to optimize both of these and deliver a good experience, and then, run those campaigns differently.
Yeah, they absolutely have to be different on that side of things. I pay attention when I'm at different shows. I like to attend a lot in person. So even if I'm going in just to be a speaker at something, I still walk the floors. I see what's going on. I see what they're doing. And when that really clicked for me, it was early on, one of the first events that opened back up, and they had everyone there live and obviously properly distanced, all of those things, the lovely masks that we all miss so very much. And they had these giant screens that people virtually were in a hallway that you could go and talk to them. No one knew what to do with it. No one on site wanted to do that. They saw this, and in theory, on paper, I would have been like, oh, that could work. Okay, that's how you get a virtual audience in. But then to see it play out, I actually felt really bad, because people were like ducking by it because they didn't want to get stuck talking to someone on a screen, because they were there to be together. And they also did a good job at that one, though. They gave a lot of free time. I don't think you can schedule someone start to finish 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. every single night. People need time to either get some work done, to rest and relax, to refresh, to just have a few minutes. I think gone is the day of the in-person that is just go, go, go 24/7.
Yes.
I'm not going to show up to an event that's 3 to 5 days long if I don't get a couple of breaks every day to go check my email, check in with my team, see where my events are at. It's not a thing.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about formatting of events. I have a very strong opinion on this.
Ooh, tell me.
Yes, I have strong opinion. I've been to a bunch of events over the last few years, and I give the same feedback every time. I'm like, less speakers. Give me less speakers. Give me less speakers. Give me better speakers. Give me more what I would consider collaboration. Give me more peer-to-peer conversation. Give me a discussion that is orchestrated amongst 20, 30 people with a topic where I can feel comfortable to, I'm comfortable talking in a large room. I'm okay with it to have a discussion and yell across the hall. I've done it. Some people are not. But when you get people in a session with 20 people and, maybe a person like, an expert like yourself orchestrating the conversation, right? People thrive in that. And I think it's this idea of the way events and trade shows and all this stuff was done Everybody needs to basically crumple it up, throw it away, sit down and say, what now? How can it be better? What do people want? And I think those are two things for me that just, I would love to see more at events. I would love to see more, I would say, networking opportunities that have authenticity to them. I've seen some people try some things. So I'd love your take on the layout of an event, the sessions at events, kind of what you were describing.
Yeah. Do you know who an absolute rock star at that is? And if you don't know her, she should be on the show first off, but go follow Tahira Endine. She's now currently heading up programming for IMEX. She used to do that with Site. She is one of the most forward-thinking individuals, and what she has planned this year for IMEX and that education and what it looks like, she is flipping it on its ear.
How do I spell her name?
Tahiraendean. And she has a book out on event design. She is incredible as a human. And Catherine Frankson from Money 2020, she used to be with Informa.
Oh, nice. Yes.
The two of them are looking at these through such a different lens. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to let Tahira do the announcement for IMEX, but the discussion that she has me involved with for the Las Vegas one, I am giddy with excitement over it, that I'm not just going in and talking at a crowd. That's one of my least favorite things. I can do it, but I'd rather have a conversation. I'd rather be engaging at that point. Yeah. So you're going to see some cool stuff coming this year.
I'm going to Roanne and Ish. Let's get both of them. Let's send a feeler out. Let's leverage Kate. Okay. Throw her name in there and let's see if we can get them both on the show. Maybe I can get all three of you on the show at the same time and have kind of a round table discussion here live.
That, what are the Wonder Twin powers? Computers might just start short circuiting and
cool. Once you guys are done with this work or leading up to it, or once it's been announced, I would love to do that and have a discussion. Cause I'd like to see those changes. I'd like to see stuff tried. I'd like to go to an event where something was tried differently. And I was like, hey, it didn't work. No problem. On to the next. I want stuff to be done differently to see how we can get this interpersonal connection, the network, the relationships, the conversation, the stuff you're flying home on a plane and you're like, man, that was good. Or, that one thing you wrote in a notebook that either changes your life or changes your professional trajectory. I think that's kind of the beautiful piece of events.
I think this meeting people, the event I just did last week, we had a VIP party prior to it, just making sure that we acknowledge some of the top people that were a part of the organization. And when I did the announcement 15 minutes before doors for Gen Pop coming out, I had let everyone know. I thanked them for being there, why they were there. This is the reason for what we do. But also we have a brand new audience walking in this door downstairs. I am closing down this top VIP area and you're going downstairs. You are the face of this. You have helped build this to what it is. And now we need to be inclusive and welcome everyone new in. So even though I know you know each other, you've now had an hour to visit and catch up. I need you to now go downstairs and meet somebody new and make them feel included as well. And they did. I was like, oh, it worked.
That's awesome. No, I mean, what's funny about that? This is a quick story I'll tell, but I was at our industry has an event. It's EDPA. It's the Experiential Designer Producer Association, full mouthful. Actually, Mel White, who's on here, has a rep at his company. His name is Harold, the guy that I love. And I ended up at this lunch table just randomly at this event. I grabbed my lunch, I sat down. I didn't really realize what I was walking into, but it was Harold. I don't want to age Harold, but he's on the upper scale of it and he wears it very well. And then there was another young woman. I mean, she couldn't have been more than 25. 24. And she worked for another company and maybe one or two others, and then myself. And I walked into this conversation of a 24-year-old woman talking about her professional experience, which is very little, but talented, sought after, sharp, knows what she wants, knows what she's doing. I can appreciate that. But her perspective on the world and working remote and traveling and the freedom she has in this new way. And Harold and some of the others, just what? Harold's talking about how he gets energy from being at an office and with people and around his peers. Her talking how she gets energy by opposite things. And it's it was just an awesome, little tense at times, but great conversation. And you don't get that, you just don't get that there. And then think about the relationships then from there. The next time you see that person or at the bar that night, you're like, I would make a joke. I think I made a joke that night to one of them about what they said. And it's a cool piece that you can't recreate unless you're at
No.
an event.
Like how I think of how many just inside jokes that we have in like running vernacular that you picked up from a person at an event who you bonded with. Some of my dearest
Yes.
friends. I look at that as if I were to retire tomorrow because I won a 10-digit lottery and you're never going to see me again. Who are the people I would still be talking to? Over half of them I've met through our events community. Like they're that near and dear to me. Those are the relationships that you form, bonds.
How about from the event side of things? Not everybody loves to talk about this, but I feel like you'll be able to. Is ROI, business deliverables, initiatives. It's something that I think gets kind of thrown out there, but not enough people talk about it. What do you see from your side with all your planning and being involved in the beginning and strategizing? Where are you seeing what kind of initiatives and deliverables are brands and people looking for out of major events like these?
And the ROI is really morphed into a lot of ROE, the return on emotion side of things, of building those super loyal friends that become clients. People work with who they like. So, well, yes, there are certain metrics that you have to look at. How many leads did I get? How many converted? What does it look like numbers wise? That's not the only thing. Like this is a long game. I think if you're being transactional, you're doing it wrong. You need to be looking to build relationships for the long term so that that person uses you at the company that they're at now. They use you again when they move on to the next stage of their career. And they also invite you into their circle and you meet 10 more of their friends that do what they do and start using you like that. It's not always easy to quantify what that looks like, but we're getting there. I think we're starting to learn what some of those new KPIs look like, but they're new to a lot of people, and new is scary, especially like you said, some seasoned people are very set in their ways and haven't yet embraced it, but we need to embrace change. If you're not, you're being left behind.
Actually, hold on, just on that ROI to return on emotion. I understand that, emotion goes into experience, all these things that we're trying to deliver and get. I had a cool conversation with Sam Zelich. He is the community manager at Squarespace. And he runs a couple events, both virtual, in person. We had a very awesome conversation. And he is like after this thing called the return on fun. Like, how does fun return to your business in events? I thought it was a very fascinating discussion. And that goes into what you're saying there. What about what are you seeing these brands like? What are their initiatives with these events other than just, general brand awareness? But what are some things that they are seeking and trying to get out there through these events and using this strategy? Because it's a strategy, it's a channel. What are they doing?
I think some of them depend on which show it is that you're looking at. Like you said, a lot is brand awareness. Some of it is kind of getting the temperature of the community. I've had more people this past year at events ask for my opinion on things so that as they're creating, designing, looking for what they're going to do moving forward, they're asking to hear, what would you as a planner, what would you in this role, what do you need to see from us to be better partners to you? And it's kind of holding the direction of where they're going with it. But building those networks, and those are the biggest pieces that I'm seeing. Is we're helping to mold the future of events, and it's really an exciting place to be right now that we were given the opportunity. We broke everything. We didn't have a choice in it. It was broken for us, and now we get to rebuild it in the right way. And I hope we're doing it. What is the name of the Japanese style of rebuilding? If someone knows, put it into the chat, because the word is, I'm losing it right now, but they rebuild something stronger with gold and it becomes a work of art and it becomes a beauty. And I think our industry, thank you. They put it in.
Donnie.
You're my hero today for that. I love that. We were broken. Let's rebuild stronger than we were before. And people are looking for that input. That's what they're getting. So that, next year and the year after, we will be doing things completely differently. And it's based on our input of what we want and we need.
You've had a pretty cool career and you've done cool stuff. You've worked on cool stuff. You've executed, right? What kind of advice do you have for maybe a, 24, 25, 26, sub 30 person that's working in events, kind of either on the brand side, on agency? I mean, doesn't matter, but they have to create, execute, develop event marketing type strategies. What kind of advice do you have for them, to make sure you're going down the right path?
Learn exactly what's happening in every single role. I have sat in every seat in every position, whether that be I learned how to expedite food in a kitchen to put on an event the proper way. I've sat behind the scenes with people doing data analytics and audio visual. I understand what goes into it all so that I know what I'm pushing and that I'm not selling a dream and having my team live the nightmare. That is just, I feel like one of the biggest pitfalls is if you don't truly understand what's happening with the event and what you are putting out there affects not only the experience, but what your team has to go through. I actively have conversations with every single team to say, here's what we're thinking. Is it easier for you if we do it this way or that way? What's going to make your life easy? And that's also how you build a really loyal team that has buy-in and they want to execute to that level of precision that you're expecting from them. If you're not having those conversations and you don't understand what that every member of your team's going through, someone's going to actually hate you at the end of the day. Like, I can't believe she said we were doing that. It's just not even possible. So getting that buy-in and that feedback from people.
You feel like that's a little bit of the anxiety on the event planner, event marketer side. Like, I know like a lot, we've worked with so many clients over the years on trade show booth build outs, on events, on activations, all the different things. And what we find is that the more educated and sophisticated the person we're working with is, the way better the end product comes out. There's just, the conversations are different. Whereas people that are not as, I don't want to call them not educated, but not as experienced and sophisticated in it, essentially a lot of what you're doing is you're just trying to map everything out for them and be like, hey, it's a little bit of hand holding in a way where you're saying, like, because that's all they're worried about. They are worried about, are they going to deliver something to their company that is crap, but they don't know enough. So you think that has a little bit to do with it?
I do. I think we need to teach people how to think bigger picture. I wish I had found some organizations and associations earlier in my career that I was exposed to it earlier on. I really like that give back and educating people and having those conversations, because you're not trained to think 30,000 feet. If you're in a specific role, you're trained to think 5,000 feet. And I just need to get this one job done. But how does your job affect the other 6 people that are flying at 5,000 feet with you? So I think it's just, getting them involved to be part of the team, and that also being open to learn. Like, I hired a new coordinator, and let me tell you, I want 20 of her. If I could have 20 Simones in my life, like, oh my goodness.
Send me Simone. You have others. If you have other Simones, I'll take a Simone here all day.
She is the Wu-Tang Killer Bee's knees. Let me tell you, one of my favorite humans, and just, she wants to learn everything and she's open to it. She'll say, what can I do better? How would you answer this side of things? And I don't think we all have that attitude. I worked with a team a while back. I came in as a consultant with them, and the person on the team that I was supposed to be helping to coach the most, I would say, hey, let's look at, this registration process. Looks like there were some pieces that could have gone better. Let's do a postmortem on it to see how we make it better for next time. And her response verbatim, she goes, yeah, I know. Oh, okay. So well that registration was one of the worst I've ever seen, sat through, agonized over, and I wanted to go pour champagne myself and try and hand it to every person in line that was going, ugh. You can't have the attitude of, know it all. I don't know it all. I'll be the first to admit that.
Nice. Just so everybody knows, we're coming up on the hour here. I'm going to keep rolling a little bit. If anybody has Q&A, any question, anything they want to ask, throw it in the chat, throw it in the Q&A. Anything you want to ask Kate, anything you want to ask myself, feel free and throw it in there. We're going to go a couple more minutes here. Kate, strategy, something you and I have discussed a good bit about. Tell me about something maybe you were involved in from like the ideation all the way through the end, or maybe just kind of your thoughts on it. I'm a big believer, and I keep beating this drum, and I'm going to continue beating it until somebody throws my drum off a cliff. But is that I think events, trade shows, activations, a lot of companies have not put an emphasis on strategy. Events has slipped from being a channel that has a purpose to being something that you just do. And that's something that just gets executed. And from my short stint running a podcast, I don't know how many months now, 7, 8, 9 months or something, is all the great event marketers, event planners, marketers, people, anybody running those things that are really executing at a high level, they are strategic with what they do, how they do, and the way they do. So I just kind of want your thought on that.
I always look at painting the picture as done. What is this going to look like when it finishes? All of the brush strokes that go into it. You look at what that end goal is and you work backwards from that piece. That's really my strategy on it, is who are we trying to talk to? What are we trying to accomplish? What is the brand message? What are those brand core values of all of it? And if you're pitching something and it doesn't work and fit within what that end goal is, it may be a wonderful idea, but it doesn't fit that. And you need to be able to say no to it, because you're going to have a lot of great ideas come your way. But if they're not part of that plan that gets you to where you want to be for that specific event, you need to table those for potentially a different event. It's okay to say no to things. There's some great ideas that come into the room, but if they just don't fit, you have to be okay to say no on that side. Every move you make, everything you plan, every single, activation person in there, how do they help you to get to that goal? And if you can't answer that, if you can't connect those two dots, they don't belong in that room.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Let me ask you something else. I also have this other theory. And I'm going to start testing my theories on the smart people that I talk to make sure I'm correct, or I could be wrong. Do you feel like a lot of leadership at brands that have these departments, I feel like the stress and not the stress, but what's important is becoming of just making sure the event happens. Just make sure that it goes smoothly. Just make sure that the trade show booth looks good. Just to make sure that everything comes to life, versus what is the output, like what you're talking about? The idea of beginning with the end in mind. What is the experience like? What do the deliverables look like? What are we trying to accomplish? To me, I feel like it's not just the event marketers or the event planners, the marketers, it's leadership at these companies. It's as if it has slipped and fallen off the planet to where it's not a focus. It doesn't truly exist. And just kind of getting by is okay.
Oof, that's a tough one. I hate when I see that, and I'm fortunate that I'm in a spot I don't take on clients that I get that feeling from. That's not who I work with. I think sometimes you have to say no if they don't get it. I had someone reach out to me, it was a few years ago, asking to work on a project. And as soon as I chatted with them and their leadership, I knew they were saying that they checked the box and they consulted with someone, that what I said actually did not matter and they weren't going to implement. They were simply using it as a way to say, yes, we did this because you said that we needed to, but they didn't feel that. So you've got to get that buy-in from the top down and explain why. Do case studies. I have people leave rooms that I've been a part of discussions in and say, hey, I just was in this room. Here's what I heard. This is why I think we should do it different. Like, I give you permission to use my name and say, oh, I just saw this amazing thing at an event and it changed my perspective. And I think we should do it. And here's why. I think your theory is completely correct on it. And it's tough. People are set in their ways and change is scary.
Yeah, what's funny is we have a discussion. I've pushed this on my sales team, right? I mean, they have all the relationships with our clients and their experience. And I talk all the time, when you're qualifying somebody, prospects, and we're talking about either an event or a trade show and activation, whatever we're going to do for them is, do they value this channel? Do they value face-to-face marketing? Or is it something that they're just going through the motions because nobody has put up a stop sign and said, what are we doing? Right? Do they value it? Do they need it? Are they executing at a level where they're looking for an output? They're looking for a goal and for a success. And it's become a bit of a benchmark for us. I mean, it's not perfect. We're trying, we are pushing, we are trying to have discussions about it, because there are just a lot of people out there that really are.
Yeah. That's a lot of times when I use that term, I'm like, paint this picture done for me. I want to hear in your words.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah. You tell me what this should look like at the end of the day. When we're done painting, paint this picture done for me, because then I can understand what they want to see and then help to guide them to get to that.
Nice. We're coming right up on an hour here. I appreciate everybody sticking around with us, taking time out of the day. Kate, I have one last question for you. And my question for you is something that I try to close. I do a lot of pre-recorded podcasts as well, and I always forget to do this on the live show. But the more, which is incredible, right? The pre-recorded, though, I've gotten some great answers, and I love hearing what people say. It doesn't need to be about events. It could be anything. So don't frame it in events, but it is, what is advice to your younger self that you would give?
Ooh, advice to my younger self. I would say take that risk. We're not always wanting to change or do something big. And I waited a little longer in my career. I wish I would have gone out and traveled more earlier and experienced it so that I could have been that rock star at 21. Also learn to say no. No is a big thing. Say no to anything that doesn't serve you. If you're not passionate about it, you're going to hate doing it the whole time. So don't be afraid to say no to it.
Take that risk and learn to say no. Kate, let's end on that because that was fantastic. And that's part of the reason I asked that question. I need to start. Thank you, everybody who tuned in today, taking an hour, sitting with us, talking events, trade shows, activations, event marketing, experiential marketing, all these cool terms that we have. Kate, you are awesome. You do great work. You were a pleasure to talk to, and I appreciate you being here today.
Same. Thanks for having me.
You got it. And we are going to do a 2 or 3-headed monster show and have a discussion.
I love it.
Now that I brought that up. So I might hold you to being there.
Totally. I'm in.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Kate, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.